case I miss names here. So let me, I know I've got June Gales, because I've spoken to her. And I heard Lizette and Debbie I saw an email from. So who else do I have here?
Lisa Diller.
Hi, Lisa. Okay. Other people?
John's on here. John Borland is on here. This is
Hi. Hi,
John.
John. Hi.
Christina Youngblood's on here.
Christina, I did see her sign in. Hello.
Karen Pleasant's on here.
Karen Pleasant, great. And I just heard a ding, telltale ding.
We've got a wireless caller from 703. I don't know who that is.
It's Karen.
Okay.
Okay, that's Karen. Let me see if there's anybody else I see in this list that I haven't written down. Oh, I see Casey is here.
Yes,
and,
I'm here.
Okay,
I'm showing up as a caller under David Mathis, so that's my home phone, but I'm here.
Okay. So I think I've got everyone captured then and written down. I'm sure we'll get a few late joins and we'll just interrupt for a moment. So is there anyone that is intending to see the slides as projected that does not see them? Okay, that's a good sign. All right, let me get going then. Thanks everybody for joining us on this afternoon or evening. First day we've gotten rain in Seattle in something like 60 days, so we're very happy here, or maybe it's 90 days, it's been a while. So tonight we have both the Pediatric Advisory Committee as well as the Adult Advisory Committee, or members from both. And so we've got a number of people that I know participate in research CP at varying degrees and whatnot. But so we'll have a recording for those that can't listen to it, and we'll do it. So do we want to? We've done a roll call, so we'll go on from there. Okay. So if you're following along with slides, I'm going to go to the agenda slide. So what I intend to do is sort of take you through. I think it's been many more months since I've done an update with the adults, and I think I did my initial sort of kickoff, I want to say in March or so, with the PEDS Council. So I kind of drew this as what's new in the last 9 months, so it should be somewhere in the middle, and where have we sort of fallen short of our goals. I'll talk a little bit about research CP, although as I said, it looks like a number of you got to participate in that. Let me just ask who joined.
Debbie.
Oh, that's Debbie back again. And then I'm going to talk a bit about the status of CPRN and where we are and our plans going forward, and talk about the opportunities for you guys to engage if you want. I mean, just like having engaged in research CP or sort of giving us feedback on these calls is sufficient, but there's lots of other opportunities developing for you to engage in. I want to make sure you have a sense of those. And then there's time at the tail end of that for anything else that is important for any of you to bring up or would like to see us do. Okay, so I am moving on to the next slide, although it's being slow. There we go. So what have we accomplished? Well, as everybody knows, in late December or January, we got the Research CP Award from PCORI. And, you know, I feel quite good about how we executed on that. I find that when I talk to the PCORI program people, they seem to be surprised that we said what we were going to do and then we did what we said. So I think we've done a good job of sort of executing the plan, and I feel like we also got a good result. I'm going to interrupt and just ask who joined.
Mary Giannotti.
Hi, Mary. So we also established the Pediatric Community Advisory Committee, which is great, and gotten some lots of engagement there. And I'm going to talk a bit towards the end about sort of committee structures, not to bore you guys to sin, but to show you where now that we have these 3 standing committees, how do groups engage. So it was important to round out the adult panel with people that were with the PEDS panel. So we have 14 Institutional Review Board, or IRB, approvals, and that's whenever you're conducting research, that's what the hospital or university requires of you. So we have 14 IRB approvals for the registry, and we have 12 what are called business associates or data use agreements, and that's what allows a hospital to collect data at their site and then move it to the University of Utah, where our data center is. We have 6 sites that are actually collecting data on patients right now, and so that's, we're really getting underway. We have more sites that will be coming online in coming months. This is a hard process to get up and running, and then once they get up and running, it's going to produce just a wealth of data about the CP population. And those sites are Nationwide Children's Hospital, Seattle Children's Hospital, Children's of Alabama, Gillette, Primary Children's Hospital, and Children's of Colorado are the 6 sites that are collecting currently. We completed our standard operating procedures, so this is really how we govern. And, we're kind of like a startup, so it was important to get those procedures in place to sort of determine how we function and document that for everyone and be very transparent. And since we completed that, we added 3 sites: Phoenix Children's, Texas Children's in Houston, and UT Health in Houston as well. We've applied for an additional application or grant from NIH in collaboration with Michael Kruer, who's the pediatric neurologist who's doing genetic studies based out of Phoenix Children's. And so one of the things that is you'll see as I'll talk about in a little bit is the importance of getting as many grant applications in, because they're tough to get funded, and that's a key part of sort of sustaining our vision. We built My Cerebral Palsy for that's the web portal for the patient-reported outcomes registry, and I've asked many of you have signed up to sort of play with that, and I'm going to need a little more feedback on that. But right now we're just waiting for our IRB approval for the adult studies to go in there, and we will launch that. And we signed a license for CP Pro, which is a measure of, the main domain is sort of mobility. This is a pediatric measure. It's a parent report, and this is going to go ultimately into the Pro registry as an annual measure for GMFCS 1 through 3 kids. So Lisa, since you had joined that group, we decided to move forward with that. It's taken us a while, but we've got the license done.
Great.
And there's no cost to us, and we're just now trying to get what are called the short forms. And then we had a significant presence last week at AACPDM. We gave a free paper, a breakfast seminar. Marshalyn Yergin Alsup presented about CPRN during the general session, and we had lots of side meetings. Yeah.
Will you just say who she is for people that
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought everybody knew who Marshalyn is. Marshalyn A is a marvelous person who won the Lifetime Achievement, was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award this year at the AACPDM meeting. And she is I want to say she's a developmental pediatrician, but that may not be what her MD focus is. But she is at the Center for Disease Control, and she runs the surveillance network or networks for autism and for CP, and she's just been a great force in looking at epidemiology in CP overall. So that's kind of what we've accomplished in the last 9 months. Again, I feel good about it. Before I move on to what we didn't accomplish, I'll just see if anybody has any questions about that. Okay. I was putting together a similar presentation for the investigators at AACPDM, and I started with my deck from last year. And I took the goals for 2017 and went, oh, we didn't get that done, we didn't get that done. And so this is where I got my setbacks from. So the PCORI trial that many of you participated in, reviewing and whatnot, didn't get funded, and that was a big disappointment, especially since it was round 2. The Pro registry, we were really expecting we would have gotten out sometime earlier this year. We had just substantial delays in getting REDCap, which is the survey tool, connected to the portal. There's lots of trials and tribulations there. We're having great progress with Epic, but our surgical forms have been slower to come along. So all of the forms that we have and all of the data collection that's happening in Epic today, which is the electronic health record at many of our sites, is just about like non-surgical exams, like what is your type of CP and you know what limbs are involved and various medical history and whatnot. But we also intend to be collecting lots of information about surgical interventions, and those will start to get rolled out in the coming 6 months or so. I think some of them will be out sooner and some towards the end of that time frame. Cerner, which is the other big, so I think when we look across the market, I think Epic is about 70%. I think Cerner is 20% of the electronic health record systems, and then a GE product is about 10%. And we have been having a lot of trouble getting our forms up in Cerner, and that's just making it so we can't collect as much data at as many places. And then the data is collected at all these sites, and then it gets transferred to the University of Utah. And even though we have 6 sites that are up and running, we only have data transferred from 4 of them. And so getting the data transfer process, once we get through it, it'll be somewhat automated, but that's been delayed. And overall, although we've got lots of sites that have the leading EMR, and they have all of our stuff, our forms, and our registry database, they have had trouble getting the resources to it. So it's taking longer than I would certainly like. So that's sort of overall in all the core parts of CPRN that we've been trying to move forward. Those are the things that didn't go so well. Any questions about that? No. Okay. I'm going to move on to the next slide, which is just to show you where it is. And I think I've given this in a tabular format, which is more useful. But those are the, they won't quite add up to 18 or to 20 pins because it doesn't show you 2 pins for Houston or 2 pins for Utah or things like that. But we've got a pretty good spread, but we've really opened the network up for more sites to join, and we have a lot of interest, and so I think you'll see that our coverage across the U.S. expand in coming months. Okay, so a lot of people in this crew participated at varying stages. I think everyone, in fact, participated in varying stages of research CP. So I'm going to move fairly quickly through this. Casey, you're the only one on the list that I don't know if you were able to participate in the webinars and the co-digital stuff. I don't. So if you didn't.
I did.
Okay, good.
I don't think I popped up on 2 of them because I didn't have the sound, but I've gone through all the decks that you've sent, so I've looked at all the information.
Great. That just tells me I can move through this quickly. So, these are the 4 things that we set out to do. I'm not going to go through them. The webinars were intended to provide context and understand sort of the capability of what can be done in research. We generated a total of 392 ideas, actually. And then the planning team did a sort of a deduping and consolidation because there was a fair amount of overlap, and then we brought the top 20 ideas to the workshop in Chicago. We had an absolutely great group. I'm sorry, Karen, that you couldn't make it. I hope you're doing better. And that was quite unfortunate. I'm sure you were disappointed. But we had a great group, great exchanges, great relationships built. And in the end, the group winnowed it down to about 16 ideas by finding a little further consolidation, pushing one thing out into being more of a quality improvement piece rather than a research question. That was the question about transition. And we had lots of great learnings. I think it really solidified for people the importance of longitudinal studies, how key participation is as an outcome measure, and then just the incredible relationships and exchanges that were built, and how important that sort of active listening between both the clinicians and the community. And June, I know I can't use patient all the time, but patient engagement is the word that it gets called. But I gotta get used to calling it community engagement. I've changed it where I can. But it was really powerful. Again, just moving along quickly because we distributed these. The top ideas fit, into 3 specific themes and 1, other category. A lot was about comparing interventions and understanding, what patient characteristics, what interventions would have the best outcomes for whom. A lot focused on exercise and physical activity and chronic disease risk. And then related to that, in many ways, was understanding aging and how CP affects the aging process, and lots of big ahas about that that came out of it. And then, a couple other sort of very specific research ideas that just kind of fell into an other category. We are... Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I'm skipping ahead of this slide. So I think I talked about, there's a strong sense that people want to stay engaged. Talked about the need for longitudinal. People want to see us keep the momentum from this, and that is definitely a challenge, but I'm hoping with what we've got in front of us, we will be able to do that. I'll talk a bit about that. Talked about outcomes. Importance of adult perspective was just huge. And then, a lot of focus on being inclusive of all GMFCS levels and all ages. Don't just study kids. Don't just study adults. Don't just study ambulatory people. There's really a strong need to do a sort of balanced research portfolio. For those of you that weren't there, that's the map of where everybody came from. So we had quite the geographically diverse group. And so where are we now? So we're actually doing the end notes. So that's the process of kind of taking the references you've made and making sure they're correct and numbered in the right order, which is more painful than anyone would imagine. So we're in final editing process, and we're hoping to publish in Developmental Medicine and Child Neurology, which is the journal associated with the American Academy of Cerebral Palsy and Developmental Medicine. We reached out to them and said, this was a very community-engaged discussion, and it's really important to us that when we publish this, that it's not only accessible to people that are Academy members or can pay, $35 for an article. And they agreed that they have an ability to make a certain number of articles free and open. They said, assuming we get published, they will make this one of the ones that gets made available immediately upon publication. That said, I'm going to look to see whether or not we can, how big of a group we can distribute it to under, with confidence, with confidentiality, and get it out to all of you so that you can see it before it even gets published. Mary or Debbie, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I can read rules and I can ask the editor, but I don't know if you have any idea if we'd be able to distribute it to as many as 45 people without...
Paul, this is Mary. If you get an author's copy, you can send it to whoever you want.
Okay. But the question is, can I send it before it's public, before it's accepted?
Well, you need to protect your your intellectual property.
Right.
So
right. So
you can send an EPUB ahead of print.
Yeah. No, I know that.
So the version that's accepted, you can send the Word document out.
Right.
Yeah, what if we sign some kind of non-disclosure thing for what you send out earlier?
We could do that, June. That's a possibility as well. I will follow up with with Developmental Medicine. They're very accessible, and just say, hey, we've got this bigger group that participated in this. They're not all editors. Can we share it confidentially with them? Is that a problem? And I just want to make sure we don't make a big mistake in doing that. So that's a fair request. And then this is going to be the basis for developing CPRN studies. And so our standard operating procedures, one of the things it says is if you propose a study, you've got to describe how it fits with the research CP agenda. And it's not that we wouldn't ever do anything that's not on that agenda, but there's a sort of another checkpoint where community members weigh in. So we want to keep it something that we want to keep the research focused on things that the community cares about. And they believe that you guys believe will be most impactful. So I think what you can do to help advance this is when you read the list, you know, sort of just let me know what you're most passionate about and what level you might be willing to engage in. There's really two ways to engage on a more regular basis in the coming months. One is to join a study team. And so a study team is a set of clinicians and community advocates that are working on developing a study question all the way through to being a study that gets funded. And those studies are greatly enhanced in quality by having members of the community involved at any number of levels. And you can really dial what that participation looks like with the study principal investigator, but that's really one tremendous opportunity. The other is we've created 3 subcommittees, which I'll talk about in a moment, but one is called the Research Steering Subcommittee, which is effectively the executive committee, you know, so it's about 9 of us that run CPRN jointly, and then 6 members of the community, probably 3 adults and 3 you know, parents, caregivers of kids. And the idea is that after a study comes all the way through the process, the sign-off on whether or not we put the full weight of CPRN behind it is made by that research steering subcommittee. And that's probably going to be a couple-year appointment and probably 1 to 3 meetings a year of a couple hours. You know, you'll get 1 or 2 studies to read. You'll read them. They'll get presented to us by the study team or by the PI, and you'll kind of give a thumbs up, thumbs down, and things have to get a 70% vote to get implemented. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that more in a bit, but that's really a great way to engage. And then I hope, I don't know that it'll be successful, but I hope to turn my cerebral palsy into a real platform for engagement so that you can not only participate as a research subject in a patient-reported outcome study, but also have a forum to discuss research and research priorities. I have to figure out a way to include the great community we developed from the clinical side there to make it so that discussion can be you know, two-sided and broad. But that's really you know, a key goal for how we can get you to be more engaged. So let me ask if you have any questions about that before I go on and sort of explain some of the details behind the Research Steering Committee. Actually, I'm going to talk a little bit more about our study, both our study groups as well as Research Steering Committee. Any questions? Okay, so we have a number of these active working groups, and typically a study group is meeting, depending on what stage they're in, they're meeting as much as once every 2 weeks for an hour with some sort of homework in between, to maybe once a month to just kind of move things along. Some things, and then some things go on hiatus, like the Pediatric Patient-Reported Outcomes group did a bunch of calls in, well, I want to say sort of December, January, February, and then we went into this we made some decisions, we went into a licensing mode, and that's just taken many months. And so we will probably spin up again sometime in the coming months. But so there's the adult study group that many of you have participated in that Mary and Debbie run. There's the investigator committee, which is really coming out of this drudgery phase of getting all these agreements done and getting these forms implemented that, you know, I don't think anybody really enjoys doing those parts. We have a quality improvement study group that's working on a protocol to reduce infections, which is a very common side effect with intrathecal baclofen pumps. So that's about neurosurgeons from about 4 centers. And then we have a comparative effectiveness group that's looking at taking this PCORI study and considering narrowing it even greater to looking at something like selective dorsal rhizotomy versus serial Botox, and trying to figure out how to do that in the short term and then start to measure midterm and long-term outcomes. So those are the active groups. What we have in terms of a pipeline is, a number of things. So this, a T or time is across the bottom. These are not proportional, but we are in the final editing phases of Research CP. The CPRN registry is implemented in a number of sites, but has more sites that it needs to get through, so it's executing. The Adult Pro registry is we're just waiting for a few tweaks in this IRB approval. The CURA application is submitted, and then the ITB pump and the Peds Pro registry are sort of a little earlier. And then the front of the funnel, things that haven't even gotten reviewed as concepts yet with the investigator committee, are this SDR versus Botox, Deb Gabler from the Ryan Ability Lab, the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab, the Ability Lab, which used to be RIC, and Christy Bjornson are working on a thing with, it's about joint decision making and about using assistive devices and how it changes participation. And then there's another grant for infrastructure that we're looking at doing called with the Pediatric Epilepsy Research Foundation. So we've got some good leads on a good funding opportunity there. So that's all the stuff we have going in the pipeline. It's really important for us to fill this pipeline, so we're pushing on the investigators to develop more things, and they're saying, give us the output from the Research CP meeting. We want to do things that are, on that agenda, which is the right answer and is great. Any questions about the pipeline? Okay, so what do we plan going forward? Yeah, go ahead.
June Kales here. On the Adult Pro registry, what's your projection on the IRB approval?
So the IRB approval is stuck behind someone who is needs to be on the IRB protocol finishing a training. And so they know that they need to finish it. So it's like it could be any time now in the next few weeks. There are no outstanding scientific issues that we haven't resolved. So it's pretty close. That said, we also ran the studies by a survey methodologist at University of Utah, and they gave some feedback to Mary and Debbie about maybe factoring these to be a little bit smaller and kind of making some of the answers align with other studies. I don't know, Mary or Debbie, do you want to summarize where you are with that?
Yeah, we basically, it had to do with the demographic information about employment and income and so forth. So to align it with other disability statistic surveys. So, we just need to vet those questions. Debbie and I have already identified them, and I'm going to send out a call to the clinicians and the adult panel to look at those items and see what would be best, and then talk about what we can lose. I think we have 3 distinct set of surveys, and we kind of have to see if we can get everything into a 15-minute window. But we are, and then we were trying to move forward for funding for sure. But I think we need to go through the executive committee process first.
Yeah, so one of the things that's kind of funky about the Pro registry is it doesn't make sense for it to be under the same governance exactly as the clinical studies, because there's no, the need of investigator buy-in is a little different. So we should talk about that. This is a thing I haven't figured out what to do about, but most pro registries have a different governance structure than, say, than some other set of network governance. So, but it can't hurt to have people look at it and get feedback. But
so if that's the case, then what I could also put on the agenda for the adult consumer panel, along with the clinician, is to review specific aims that we developed over the summer and see if people want to refine them or refocus them, so that we can move forward as soon as the IRB is, is approved in a strategic fashion.
Yeah, and I just want to make it a little more a little more streamlined. I feel like our multi-center studies are pretty heavyweight for what the governance is, and I want to make this a little lighter weight. So we can talk about that.
Yeah, you're the boss.
Okay, other questions on the study pipeline? Okay, I want to just make a note of something I already committed to, which is okay. So what do we plan for H2, which is the second half of the academic year? So this really means January through July of 2018 and the remaining months in 2017. And then beyond that, we want to expand the registry trial, getting it out and getting people entering data. We are definitely finding things that we will want to change. And so we sort of view this as a trial of the registry, and that we know that while we may be able to leverage the data for some study and some work, we're probably going to need to make changes, over time. We hope to get these additional forms out for orthopedic surgery and neurosurgery. The neurosurgery ones are in test at Nationwide Children's. The orthopedic surgery ones should be in test in the coming bit, but the person that is supposed to be testing just is going out on maternity leave imminently, so we're going to see if there's another solution there. And then, of course, get the forms developed for the other systems. And we have designated sites that are doing the development of those two. And then really the effort is to develop and advance a set of studies for studies in quality improvement. And so really trying to find fundable concepts that were on the research CP, I'll call it opportunity map, that's going to drive our study, and get them developed through. And it's going to take 6 months to 18 months for each idea to get developed through to the point that it's ready to be submitted for a grant. So this is going to be it's not going to be a rapid burn, but it should have a lot of foundation under it to make it be more successful. And then again, we're going to implement this first quality improvement protocol with ITB pumps and see if we can reduce infection rates for that implantation of a device, which has about a 10% infection rate, which is an unpleasant thing. And then launch the community registry and get our adult studies out there. We're also going to need to start to discuss and add sort of a set of modules around core patient characteristics. I just got what CPRR, or the Cerebral Palsy Research Registry, that's hosted out of Northwestern, and is really used as a contact database, but gathers a bunch of information about patients to see if we can rectify theirs with what's in our clinical registry and get some additional surveys into the community registry to sort of characterize the population. And get the CP Pro short forms going, which I think is based on the speed at which BU moves. Boston University moves. That's going to take a little bit of time as well. So, anything that's surprising people that's not on there, that we're not doing X or Y? Okay, I'm going to take you through a little bit of paint peeling, governance, so that you understand just a little bit more about the opportunity that I talked about a little bit earlier. So we have these 3 standing committees: the executive committee, which Mary is on, Michelle is on, I'm on. It's about 9 of us. We have the investigator committee that all the executive committee members are on, as well as like Debbie, who's on the call, is on as well, but all the site investigators. And then we have all of you as the Community Advisory Committee. So those are the 3 standing committees. We're in the process of forming these 3 subcommittees, and the governance documents sort of lay out how they all work. But the bottom line is that the investigators propose a study. The study has to be approved first by the executive committee to come in front of the investigator committee. So it's just like, does this fit? Is it looking at something on the research CP opportunity map, and is it the kind of study that CPRN can do? If yes, it gets put in front of the investigator committee and they vote on it, because to do a multi-center study, they have to think it's an interesting study to do if they're going to devote time to it. And then that process starts the principal investigator creating a whole study application, a protocol, and that gets reviewed by the scientific review subcommittee. That's like a committee at NIH that reviews grants, but it's an internal to CPRN group. And then it comes from there to what I described earlier as this research steering subcommittee. And I view this as being like the council that I sat on with the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke. It's really the last gate on whether or not a study gets the full weight of CPRN behind it. And so nobody needs to say anything now, but I'm going to send out a survey that says, or I have to think about what questions I need to ask, but really, would you want to do this, and kind of what the time commitment is, which we think, it's a couple, it's, probably a couple hours every 6 months, like 2-3 hours every 6 months. So it's not a big time commitment, but, you're going to need to read grants and it's probably going to be 1 or 2 at a time, and listen to a discussion about it, and just represent your view from where you sit as a member of the community, not partially based on your personal experience, but also based on your broader experience as knowing what our community needs. And so that's going to be a really important thing to get some people signed up to. It's probably going to be a 2 to 3 year, probably a 2-year commitment. I have to look at the governance documents to see what we wrote. And so, it's really committing to, 4 to 6 meetings or something like that over a 2-year period. So anyway, that's a key thing, and I just wanted people to know about that, and that's a very important sort of additional way you can engage. In addition to these study groups that we've described. So let's see if I have more information about that. Well, you guys know all this. This is the advisory committee that you are on. I'm not sure why I put the slide in. And I've summarized. No, there it is. I don't have to go back to the documents. I should really look at my slides right before I give them, and I'd be a little smoother. So our plan is to meet 2 times a year, unless there are more studies coming through, but it's probably max of 3 times. So it's the executive committee, the person who chairs the scientific review committee, plus 6 members of the community. And then we'll vote on these applications as they come through. So any questions about what that subcommittee is and how it might work, and what you need to know or don't need to know to be able to contribute to it? Okay, that's it. So what I'd like to just know from you is, thank you all for spending the time sort of knowing what we're doing and having engaged in Research CP. But I'd just be curious if, based on all that's going on, if there's anything that's missing to you, or what else would you like to see us do to engage you? I know one thing I took away, and I've been thinking about from the Research CP that Lisa raised, is we're sort of missing the voice of teens. And we have a few teens that have expressed an interest in engaging. I kind of want to get to the point that there's more than 2. I think I might have 3. We might extend it to young adults to some kids in their early 20s and maybe get together a group of young people to give us more perspective. So that's one thing I know. But I'm curious if anybody has anything else they'd like to see us do.
Paul, June, Kelser, you mentioned that Michelle had some plans to work on an adult with CP toolkit. And I wondered, like, where that was in the pipeline and happening with that.
So Michelle was on the call initially. I don't know if we've lost her. I would really need Michelle to comment on that. I know that she said that she is very interested in that area, and I don't know that she has funds dedicated.
Here.
There's Michelle. Michelle, you want to comment on that?
Sure. Yes, I have the adult resource guide or toolkit slated for next year, and I haven't said anything formally because I'm still trying to get through this year's documents. But it's something that I'm committed to ensuring gets done next year. Absolutely.
Great. Anything? Any other questions about what we'll do with Research CP, directions for CPRN, opportunities to engage? Okay, so what you can expect from me sometime in the coming weeks is just a request to see whether or not you want to sign up to join the Research Steering Subcommittee. I'll probably in the same survey ask if any of the planned study groups are of interest to you, and then if I've been able to get you some of our preliminary paper stuff, ask you if there are any of the study questions that you're particularly passionate about so that we could connect you with investigators interested in developing studies in those areas. So that's it. Greatly appreciate everyone's time.
Thanks, Paul, for the update.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you all.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Paul.
Bye, all.